чужим діткам дулі-дулі.
Every use case I've seen in industry to date since 2015 that tried to do something with blockchain that said, hey, let's do this on blockchain, has almost every single one of them has proven why it doesn't need blockchain. And everyone that says, hey, let me look at this problem differently through the lens of immutability, of decentralization, of a number of nuanced ideas that are actually packed up into primarily public blockchain technology, especially around token economics and what you can do with this emergent notion of being able to not just gamify human interaction. Gamification is just keeping track of scores, but then turning that into an economic set of decisions, right? I'm going to vote, or I'm going to bet that this thing, that this fact is true. Well, if the consensus is that it's false, I just lost not just a point, but real economic value in some way, either in money, real money, or some kind of other value, maybe voting points or something else. So it's applying this notion of powerful social. Public blockchain is effectively a high precision instrument for seeing problems differently and then instrumenting them in ways that would have been way too expensive and difficult to do if we had the old rails only, right? We needed a new railway to run these kinds of transactions, one that's more nimble, one that's more precocious, more always available. And once you have that kind of new rails, you have an infrastructure that can allow you to just do things completely differently.
That was really great, man. I liked it. I liked it. Everything that you've seen, they haven't got it right. Everybody out there in the community, I want to introduce to you Mr. John Wolpert. I mean, I'm going to go through this interesting little introduction here, and when I'm done, I'm going to realize that I probably should have had some champagne and wore a suit and tie here, because it's pretty impressive. Let me share this with everybody. So John Wolpert serves as ConsenSys Group Executive for Enterprise Mainnet, delivering product services and leadership to enterprises that use the public Ethereum Mainnet to conduct business. John is co-founder and steering committee chair of the Baseline protocol, an initiative of the open standards body OASIS. John is a seasoned enterprise executive and serial entrepreneur with 30 years in the business. Hear this, folks. Co-founder of IBM's global blockchain organization. John was a global product executive for IBM Blockchain with previous leadership roles serving Watson. I remember watching Watson on Jeopardy, IBM Cloud, Extreme Blue, AlphaWorks, and the Internet Division. He also co-founded the open source Hyperledger Fabric project. I'm sure a lot of folks in the Stellar community have heard these couple names. They're also continuing, guys, the original taxi riding hailing service Flywheel, and the International Life Science Research Consortium IXC. He's created new lines of businesses for numerous Fortune 100 companies, government organizations. He's written on open source and open innovation that has appeared in Harvard Business Reviews and publications by Harvard Business School Press. I read it all.
I don't think I've ever actually been right on. I had to sit here on camera listening to that whole spiel before, but
it's always a first.
Feeling funny. I gotta say, I was watching that video and I'm like, oh my god, I felt like George Carlin after the '80s, like or the '70s, like because he was pretty. Did you ever see like old George Carlin stuff? He's like,
loved it.
Straight laced, he's very like 50s, 60s looking, and then boom, he goes nuts, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, way more white in that beard.
But you're looking good, man. Yeah, I'm going full
John,
look
here.
You are, and I'm liking it. Usually I've up until now I've done so much coverage within the Stellar blockchain and Stellar community, but it's like it's interesting to me because everybody says they want to come to blockchain for freedom, right, and open source and interoperability. But then it's like we become these silos, right? Everyone becomes these silos. And so you're somebody that I've followed for many years. I've admired your work. I admire what you've been doing. And I've just been really itching at the opportunity to introduce you to our community a lot more. I just feel that there's so much that we can learn from your experience and what you've seen. And hopefully inspire some collaboration and inspiration moving forward. So thank you once again for taking the time to join the show.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, it's great. I was just talking to a pretty big banking type organization that has been using Stellar.
Wow.
I don't mind telling you that I was trying to convince them not to. I was like, an L2 off of Ethereum would be even better.
Don't worry. Right now, everybody at Stellar that's listening is making sure to go through all their contacts and double check exactly. Don't talk to Wolpert. Yeah. Talking about Madman. I was obviously reading through a lot of things that you've been doing, some of the videos, and I came across this interview you did with University of Buffalo Blockchain. It looks like you're working with, I think, ThinkLab, and in it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. In it, you mentioned that you see yourself as a technology mountain man, and that once the settle,
once the settle, it's like somebody's like, you're a pioneer, and I'm like, no, I'm a maybe a scout, right?
A scout.
Pioneers are the one. When the pioneers show up, I'll maybe hang out in the saloon and the. Do some shoot 'em ups. But when the settlers show up with the courthouses and the jails and the churches, I'm out of there. I gotta go. So I'm usually if you can tell when something's either jumped the shark or become successful because I'm gone. Right. Yeah. So still some work to do on blockchain, but at some point, I'll be off to quantum computing or something.
That's cool. That's good. It seems
just
like
an Oculus Quest 2, and I have to say it might be that I might just have to go full metaverse at this point. I was around for the Second Life thing, and I did run a video game operation for a brief second. And I would love to do that again if I didn't have to make any money. That would be a fun business. It's a lot of things like theater and art and advertising, and these are things that would be fun if you don't have to make money. If you have to make money, it sucks.
Right, right. You know, I guess that's part of it. We all, well, at least I would think we all kind of work to get to a point where money's not important. You can work on things like, futuristic stuff like the metaverse. I would love to see what you report back to John Wolpert in the metaverse experience. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
And by the way,
well,
you will not be running the metaverse on a blockchain.
for the
Blockchain will have a
record,
role, but singletons with the consensus algorithm do not scale to handle the requirements of a metaverse operation. I think a lot of people, they hear sort of high level statements about things. Oh, this is powered
right,
by blockchain, and they think that there's some like blockchain backend. And I'm like, you know how bad that would be if you were running your Twitch game off of a blockchain.
right.
I mean, well, yeah, but this is a high powered one with lots of TPS. I'm like, if you want TPS, don't use a blockchain pattern of any kind, private, public, or otherwise.
Hmm.
Use systems that are good at that are optimized for throughput and speed and all that other stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about all that too, aren't we?
Definitely, and I think that is important. I think part of what perhaps keeps blockchain not really advancing is because we keep presenting ideas that really don't make sense. We push it, we get hype around it, we get excited about it, and then we get frustrated when it doesn't work, and then we go on to another hype. And so, yeah, we'll definitely talk
Yeah.
about some more on that.
It's like, I do like this phrase, every line of code is probably in software, certainly is probably a business decision. And every business decision that doesn't understand the code is probably a bad one, which puts the
Mm,
bar pretty high for product management because it means you don't necessarily have to write it, but you better have it's kind of like art history. You don't have to, that's not going to teach you to be a good artist, but it might make you a
right.
pretty good museum curator and manager. Um, Pretty much need to do code, software art history to be a good
Gotcha.
product manager.
Yeah.
You need to know from a for loop. You need to understand what makes. You don't have to be able to write it, but you better be able to look at a body of code and go, oh, this is what it can and can't do.
Hmm.
The can't do part is key because otherwise you just
Absolutely.
lose your mind. You come up with all these stupid things, start telling those stories, and your developers and your CTO just smile and wave, boys, smile and wave, and you're just telling lies by accident. You don't know.
Right.
Um, the hardest thing for me is to get the trust with a development team to the point where they will actually do a code review or code walk with me, showing the salient parts of the code. I don't need to see the DevOps stuff, but I need to see, unless it has an impact on something like a key utility, like performance or maintainability or whatever, right? Um,
Hmm.
Sustainability, but the yeah, I mean, you need to be able to understand it and really look for what the boundaries are. You never see this on websites. Drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Again, I'm starting to sound like George Carlin. Yeah, what pisses me off is, you know,
Very
I
true.
better
Very
not go
true.
there. But yeah, what drives me crazy is all these websites out there from of services companies and software, SaaS, and they're like, we deliver speed to cash flow. I'm like,
Right.
what exactly do you do? Then you can tell me why it's good, right? But tell me what you do. Like, give me the flow chart, right? Okay,
Right.
that's the problem in software, given that everything's based on a Turing machine, which does 5 things, right? Conditionals, loops, assignment. Um, if you actually explain what your magical thing did at that level with that just no nonsense thing goes in here, it turns into that. We take it out, it goes to this thing, turn this into
Hmm.
this, outputs that. If you did that nice and clean, nobody would pay you for your software. They'd be like, well, that's pretty obvious. I don't need to pay you for that, right? So what
Uh
do we
huh.
do?
Uh huh.
We just layer bullshit on top of it. We're just like, oh
On
yes,
top
it's
of it.
value propositions. And I'm like, well, I just don't know what you actually do. So I can't
Right.
evaluate anybody anymore. I can't tell what anybody actually does, what their
Hmm.
limitations are. So it would be great, wouldn't it, if we said, yeah, blockchain, NFTs, they can do these things and they can't do this. Where's
Right.
my Apple Watch can't do this page? That's what I want. I want you ever try to do a search for something that you're trying to get your Apple product to do that it doesn't do? There's,
Oh
it's
yeah,
almost
all the
like they
time.
go out and suppress any Reddit article about what it can't do. You'll find
Right,
lots of
right,
stuff
right,
about what it
right.
can do, but not about what it can't.
Yeah,
Especially things that you
absolutely.
expect it to do that it can't do. They're like, oh, we're embarrassed by that. Anyway, I rant.
No, but it's a good point. It's a good point. I mean, and I guess maybe part of it too is it's the surprise element, because you always, at the same time, I would say you always hear about uh great products, breakthroughs, medicines, whatever the case may be, that was discovered by a product that didn't work out, right? Something that inspired something else. So I guess there's always that natural discovery that we're on. But what I want to do, I wanted to kind of go back, through your history, because I think there's a lot of great stories in there. I read that you started a company called Flywheel a long time ago, and
Yeah.
many may not know, but it was the original, I guess, cab on a map app back in '08 that is, I guess, is the taxi cab version of Uber. What was that
Well,
experience like?
it makes me a little bit sad to hear it called like Uber. Uber, I thought was kind of like what we were doing.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Admittedly, they ran right over us. A good metaphor for them. So it's a great story. There was a young guy named Daniel Garcia. I guess not
Okay.
so young anymore. Daniel Garcia at Best Buy. I was working for Best Buy's executive team back in '08. Just come back from being overseas on something, and a friend said, "Hey, you want to come and build that incubator lab like you did over at IBM?" And I said, "Oh, sure, man, we'll do that." And so what we did is basically we gave everybody, anybody, went around to all the boxes, all the Best Buy boxes, and we'd
Mm-hmm.
say, same speech. We'd say, "Look, the boss, Brad Anderson, really great CEO, very ethical guy. He said, he wants entrepreneurs working here. He wants entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs that, or people at the beginning of their careers in entrepreneurship that, young or old, are that maybe have an idea for business or technology or something in their back pocket, and they want to learn customer centricity here at Best Buy. And he wanted people to encourage people who are entrepreneurial to join the company and wear that blue shirt, right?" And so we'd go around and say, "Okay, if you've got a blue shirt on, you could be swabbing the floor, or you could be, in middle, anywhere you are. We'll give you $50,000, team of 3 or 4, in 3 months. You got to go live with John in LA at the Park La Brea in West Hollywood for 3 months.
Okay.
And we'll give you and your team will prove a business, prove it out. You can prove almost anything, technical or otherwise. You can prove it out in 3 months. You can't build it into production, but you can prove it. You can prove it ought to be built." And
Mm-hmm.
so this guy, Daniel Garcia, had this idea he made the first Cars in a Map app. This is right at the beginning of Google Maps API and
Okay.
all that stuff.
Wow. Wow.
And he wanted to put Geek Squad cars on your iPhone. This is '08. And it was an iPhone,
Uh huh.
right? In order to see where your Geek Squad car was on the way to service. And about a couple weeks in, his team, and he figured out that there was a Tal Flankreich, and it was a whole great team. They went out to dinner one night, and or to a party, and they all used their own cars. And they came back the next day, and they're like, "Why do we all go in our own separate cars? Why didn't we just take a cab?" And they're like, "Well, because they're always out of sight and out of mind. You can never see. They could be a block away." And they went, let's
Wow.
end the era of the invisible driver and
Hmm.
give them more power over with their customers by, letting, like a good driver would have a clientele, and they could all see that driver and
And this was
them and
all.
stuff.
This was actually, because you, good reminder. This was pre Uber.
Way pre, yeah, no, it was an absurd idea. It was nobody got it. Nobody liked it. Nobody, we never
Really?
did.
That's
Nobody got it. They're like, "What? On a phone? What?" Yeah, no, we had to pitch it hard. And so,
wow.
yeah, and this was before Uber, and I believe before Uber had the idea for Uber. That is, Travis and those guys. This was early in '08 that we were doing this. I don't know when they got their idea. I think it was a kind of, if you were observant, it was an obvious idea. Hey, maps on a smartphone, I can use the API, I can put stuff on it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we did that. And I think Tal was the one that said, that would be cabulous. So we called it cabulous for a while.
Cabulous?
And yeah, cabulous. Too many syllables though. So we rebranded it to Flywheel. And that was it. Yeah. In fact, I met my wife out of that. I was in a donut shop handing out donuts to taxi drivers. So effectively we built it, and the CEO said, hey, this is a good idea. It's not a Best Buy company, but I'll give you all the IP and we'll spin you out. And we did, and we raised $1 million and off we went. And it was in the early of those days, we were doing research on the topic, and I was driving around, doing ride-alongs with taxi drivers, and I was in the dispatches, at the middle of the night, listening to them on the radio, all of that. And one day, one of our team members who was a taxi driver and a coder, good combination, said, hey, let's call all the dispatches up and have them, tell them to put out on the radio that we're buying donuts and coffee for any driver that came by and showed us their iPhone. And my wife came into that donut shop with her girlfriend, and we're like, I think she thought I was a drug dealer or something. And she was like, all these cats coming in and you're just giving them a donut. Anyway, so I got a marriage out of it. Yeah.
Hey, well then, that was worth it all. How long you been married now? So I got to ask.
Next year will be 10 years.
Congratulations. So that was Flywheel, and definitely innovative. Officially, yes, Uber didn't start until a couple years later, way before Uber started. Actually,
and then Travis and the first CEO was a young guy, really cool guy, and I think he's pretty well off at this point. Ryan Graves. I really respected this guy. He was a good listener, and I thought he had tremendous leadership skills. Actually went to the TLPA with me and some other people. TLPA is like one of the governing bodies for taxis and limos, and was really interested in stuff. And I remember we had lunch one day, and they kind of just wanted to know if we were going to go into limos. And I'm like, stupidly, I said, well, all the taxi drivers know where I live, so no, because they would kill me, and I'm not speaking figurative.
Wow. Right.
Like, okay, good. Bye.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. So after that, your history with IBM. Now, IBM has always been one of those corporations that fascinated me. I think because I get really intrigued of, the companies behind a lot of things. And, you have the credit, the strip on the back of a credit card. You have the beginning of TCP/IP, the internet. You have rocket launching to moon. IBM has played, roles in all of that. And so I think that's how I got introduced to you was, I was like, okay, IBM is IBM. And when they wanted to embark into blockchain, they chose you and a small group of individuals to lead that trek. That's pretty impressive in my opinion.
And he called me and said, hey, Lewis, it's Clark. Yeah, that's true. So Jerry Cuomo was
Jerry Cuomo called you directly.
Yeah, he's my boss.
Wow, incredible. Nice. So why don't you take us back to your journey over at IBM? Because if I'm not mistaken, you started off working with Watson, correct?
Yeah, I was working at Watson. I mean, that was my. I've been an IBMer 3 times. I think back in 4 times. I think that's the end of that.
That's it. You're a troublemaker, man.
I'm a scout. Yeah, got to go off to the wilderness. Yeah. In fact, that was my letter of resignation to Jerry was, hey, we must be doing okay because I'm off to the next thing.
Nice.
Yeah, we've always remained friendly. I mean, I was after I left IBM, because when Joe Lubin calls you and says, hey, do you want to start companies on the next internet? You say yes.
Absolutely.
And Jerry got that. He's like, yeah, you can't say no to that. And it was all very kind and cordial, and I was scrupulous after I left. I spent a year not saying a word about my point of view about Enterprise Blockchain or Fabric. Was very careful, and I didn't try to poach anybody from the company for 2 years. That's a number of years ago. So now I have quite a few things to say about Fabric and private blockchains, but I was a good boy and didn't say anything for a good year.
Yeah, and now we have you on the show. So let's go into it. So you were at Watson, and then take us back to when I guess you went from there. He gave you the call, said, "Hey, do you want to embark into blockchain?" I guess let us know what your introduction to blockchain was.
Well, yeah, it was when Jerry called and said, "Hey, John, there's this."
Oh, that was it. You weren't even thinking about blockchain before that.
I really wasn't. I was busy with Flywheel in the early days of Bitcoin. So we were in South Beach in San Francisco, and saw a lot of things. I mean, it was right there in the same building as the early Twilio, and Instagram was like across the. We were at this place called Pier 38 before it got condemned, and there's these two guys that I never did get to talk to that turned out to be Instagram. There's just all sorts of stuff going on, but Bitcoin was not really in any conversations I was part of in those days, even though I was in the middle of all this stuff. And then it started popping up, but really on the periphery, and I was busy. I was busy doing other things in Web 2 world. Really, I got interested in 2014.
Wow. That was early. And how were those early days? I mean, with IBM Blockchain, because I know that it was IBM Blockchain, and you were also part of co-founding Hyperledger Fabric, which, So I mean, that was very interesting. I remember when I first got introduced, started deep diving Stellar. That was one of the things that I remember reading about, was kind of the relationship between Hyperledger Fabric. I think let me see. Yeah, it's I remember this. A lot of people in the Stellar community kind of remember this, was this whole private network Hyperledger relationship that was going on.
I was all wrong about all that stuff. I wrote this line early in the day. It's
really?
Consortia. This could be a really great way of getting consortia more smoothly and quickly together. And it turns out that the problem with consortia being, the thing that keeps consortia from being a mess is humans. So and blockchains don't replace humans. AI might, but not blockchain, right? Humans are the problem with consortia. But my conjecture was, it was an honest conjecture. It was, hey, maybe because we all can say we have control, but none of us is in control of the system through which we're doing business, we can get rid of some of the politics around that. No, doesn't actually. In fact, it makes it worse, at least in these days, because you have to explain what governance is all about, and then they just start squabbling about governance again. I mean, to the point where more than once I've been on calls with companies that are so-and-so, quote unquote, blockchain companies. And I'm like, where are your nodes? Oh, well, they're in our server farm. I'm like, oh, how many do you have? 4. Okay. And you're working with banks. This is a true story. You're working with banks, big ones. Or what do they say about whether they, where the nodes are? And they're like, oh, well, they want them. They want their own node. I'm like, oh, really? And so what's the problem? And they're like, well, the problem is that none of them want any of the other ones to have a node.
That's a problem,
right?
It
comes from I articulated this later, but I think it was already creeping up on me during those years on Hyperledger, and it drove a lot of decisions that turned Hyperledger into quite a complicated machine. Which is, things like channels were all about the fact that, oh my gosh, the blockchain pattern doesn't do access control very well. It doesn't compartmentalize information, and we're companies. We really don't want our partners who become a competitor to have all of our information. That's kind of a thing, right? Something in Oracle or DB2 or Oracle database or SAP or any database does pretty well, but a blockchain, anybody with a full node, is at least seeing everything that's going on, even if it's encrypted, And every good CISO knows that just encryption is not enough, right? You need to control access to the bits. And blockchains like to spread bits out, right,
Makes
to the
sense.
nodes. And so anybody with a node, and so if you have 100 companies in your private consortium, what you really have is a 100 company threat surface where the stupidest administrator in your network is going to get hacked and make you all and make the reason you did it on a private blockchain irrelevant.
Wow.
And this is just on its face an obvious thing if you're thinking it through.
Right.
It's amazing how, when you get excited about something, even the super smart people, and a whole industry is full of super smart people, we forget these basics, right?
Basic things.
Everybody else did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, wow, great big. So is it any surprise that most private blockchain projects that I know of, at least, are still kind of in either POC hell or in, we're going to call it in production, but not really in production, right? I mean, I don't even think that the most production projects I know of are truly production, not the way we think. It ain't Swift, right? It just ain't. It ain't MQ. It ain't Kix.
Right.
That's in the old days, we used to call, a production something else. So that's the problem with blockchain is it's a digital nudist colony. And the only difference between a public blockchain and a private one is, I've said this a lot, so people.
He said it's a public nudist. It's a public nudist colony.
That's the fun of the internet, is you can say the same thing and somebody new will laugh at it. But
Yes.
my wife is rolling her eyes because she's heard it enough.
She's heard it enough times.
Yeah, but it's an apt analogy because it is. It's if you don't want to take your data to Burning Man, don't put it on a blockchain.
Gotcha.
Right, and it's true. You don't do that. Don't do it. Bad idea. And we didn't really have that fully grokked in those days. And when I started to kind of get to it, that's when Joe called and said, come on over here, public blockchain. Now, public blockchain doesn't make that any easier. It makes it worse. Public blockchains are a nudist colony on a public beach. Private ones are just private beaches. Still nudist colony. You say, well, we have encryption. I'm like, well, that's like wearing a Speedo to a private beach. It's not like you're hiding anything. I know everything is.
Right.
So, you can in the world of AI, especially, even if you don't have, in the clear data, I can. One of the credit card company execs once said to me, looked me right in the eye and said, I can make you in 7 transactions with no identifying information. Just from all the exogenous data they've got on you. So don't think you're hiding. I'm pretty sure, Bitcoin was probably in there. Satoshi is probably the NSA. That's like, hey,
say
everybody,
it.
Hey,
say
what if we built this thing and convinced bad guys that it was completely confidential, and then build it that way and catch a lot of stupid criminals. I mean, it's just a brilliant idea.
I mean, it would make sense. I've thought about that because, it makes perfect sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, but then you have legitimate players. I mean, like my boss, who like, yeah, we get that. It's not private, it's not confidential, it's pseudonymous, and that's a limited value in an AI world. There are things that are truly anonymous, like Zcash, right? Because basically Zcash is a ledger that says somebody gave somebody something. Somebody gave somebody something. Somebody gave something. So over and over and over again, the morphology is all the same. There's nothing that an AI could pick up on, as long as you're careful about your setup, your zero knowledge setup, that you could pick up on and generate a classifier on. But if you've got a smart contract on anything that is articulate, like Ethereum or any of the other variants, in Stellar and all these others, there's lots of beautiful patterns that a good AI can pick up on, and you don't want that. So that's the problem. So what's the solution? So I was saying the other day, there are some people that start like a Shakespearean tragedy. They start positive and go negative. I'm like a Shakespearean comedy. I like to go negative and then wind up positive. So that's the negative, right? But this won't work, but it would if, right? And so blockchain is in my view, a good piece of middleware. It's not a good database for the reasons I've described, but it might be a good piece of middleware. That is, put the data on traditional systems of record like SAP, which, by the way, SAP, it's a good story for SAP, right? Like
Yeah.
detente for SAP and blockchains. Like, don't take your data off of SAP and put it onto this massive threat surface. Instead, work them together. And what do you use the blockchain for? Well, simply as a way of managing proofs, right? Fancy hashes. So I've got a record in my accounts payable system, or you've got a record in your accounts receivable system, and you're going to send it to me because I have to pay you. Kind of important that we have verifiably the same record.
Right.
But that is
Very
not the
important.
case
Yeah.
almost all the time today, unless you're a really big supplier to a really big company and you're both really big and you can afford that $1 million integration project. You really don't know whether your counterparty has the same information or not. Now, I submit that they should. Now, the first thought is, and this is what we had in 2015. Oh, let's put that all on a blockchain, and we have a singleton. We have a single source of truth. That single phrase, single source of truth, was the root of all the stupid in enterprise blockchain, in my view. And I like stupid. Stupid is how you get to smart. So I have a stupid idea every 38 minutes, and I love them. So I say that with respect. It was a stupid idea to treat blockchains as databases, fancy databases. Treat databases as databases, amazing technology databases. Right. So what you want to use the blockchain for is not as a single source of truth, because that creates all sorts. Now you've got noisy neighbor problems. You've got this digital nudist colony problem. You've got all these issues, finality, all this stuff. The only way to scale it is through eventual consistency. Well, banks don't like that for reasons. Those are all issues. But you could treat it as middleware and just put hashes or fancy hashes called proofs on the blockchain. That's all that goes on the blockchain. And it looks again like sameness. Proof. Nonsense. You can't backsolve that stuff. There's no data there. But you and I can subscribe to that little piece of nonsense. And if that piece of nonsense is generated by a zero knowledge circuit that effectively enforces consistency and some other rules like the price can't go over X, then we A, know that we have the same thing. We B, know that we can't repudiate. I can't say I never got the memo, which is kind of boring but important factor, right?
Right.
In disputes, right? Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, no, you knew because I got this proof here that says that you processed it. You might not have known, but your system did. And we can tell that the rules that we agreed to in the state changes of that data happen consistently between you and me. And the only thing that goes on a blockchain is a piece of nonsense about that long, right? That's it. That's a super, super boring way of using blockchain, but it works and it makes sense to people who understand this stuff. You can get that project passed by the CISO.
Right. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So you spent several years there. You like I said, you worked on Watson, Hyperledger Fabric. One other question I know, during your time there, did you work on the WorldWire project? Did you have any experience or direct knowledge of that
Jesse
project?
Jesse Lund?
Yeah, man, shout out to Jesse Lund.
Jesse Lund.
Jesse Lund. Yeah, shout out. I really liked him, man. We went into the paradise world. So if he happens to catch this, we love you. We miss you, Jesse. Love to get you on the show perhaps one day. What can you share on that project?
I was kind of gone by the time that got spun up. Jesse and I spent some number of days, I don't think it's even months that we were overlapping, maybe months, not a long time.
Okay, cool. Well, if you ever talk to Jesse, we'll love to get him on the show and talk about his experience there as well. There's been a lot of great alumni from that IBM blockchain area between those couple years. So I could only imagine it must have been some really fun times working there. As I see everyone is kind of spun off like yourself into different exciting projects, some CBDC related, and we're going to get into what you've been working on, which is your work with ConsenSys and Baseline. So Let's talk about ConsenSys. So over at ConsenSys, you are a group executive for Enterprise Mainnet. I guess can you explain what that elegant
I think
title
the title
is?
on my official employment agreement says Seeker of Awesomeness. 'Cause
Secret of
Joe's not a big
Awesomeness.
hierarchy guy. Yeah. So he's like, "What do you want to call yourself?" I'm like, "I don't know, Seeker of Awesomeness." And
I like that.
not for nothing, that was my title at IBM too. Jerry somehow let me have that title as well.
Nice. I like it.
But yeah, I effectively I go around doing Johnny Appleseed kind of stuff where, like, okay, this is a not stupid way to use the blockchain. Here's a not stupid way to use the blockchain. And as we did those things, and I was very lucky. We were the team, one of the teams that even today are sort of on the vanguard of saying, well, this is a novel way of using novel, not stupid way of using the blockchain. And those are good for the ecosystem, right? You know, we were. I don't really have a commercial job there. I just was there to help pave the way, scout out new approaches, right? That made sense.
Right.
So we did that quite a bit, and then one day we got onto this, onto the baseline, as it were. Was at a conference with Paul Brody from Ernst & Young, who was an IBMer just before I didn't meet him at IBM. He had departed before I started with blockchain, months before. And but we were at a conference together. We got talking about that old times, and yeah, one thing led to another, and we were. And he's like, he calls me up and says, "Hey, let's start something." And I'm like, "Okay, let's start this." And we got going on it, and the baseline protocol is the result. And this was all instigated by York Rhodes over at Microsoft. And
Wow.
Yeah, so Microsoft, Ernst & Young, and us, we built this kernel of a thing, which used that principle I was just saying. Use it as middleware, and and the EY is really good at zero knowledge math, and a thing called Nightfall. Today have some even more cool things like Starlight. All about privacy and enterprise use of public state machines with consensus, like Ethereum. And again, if you can approach the blockchain the way I just described, then it falls naturally to the idea that you should probably use a public L2 or a public mainnet for the job, because it is the most tamper resistant thing. It's the least surveillance resistant thing, but you don't care about surveillance resistance because there's nothing to see there. You're not depositing anything that anybody would care about. It doesn't look like anything. So they don't even know it's you, and they can't figure out who your relationships are. Nothing at all. So the only information being leaked is there is information.
Right.
There are data there are bits that are happening on this state machine, but that's it. It's dead air beyond that. So
let's say if you were to describe ConsenSys, for especially my audience, that may not be familiar at all with that side of the world, what is ConsenSys?
ConsenSys, the company I work for, well, it is and was a venture studio for building new companies on the next internet, right? The Web3. Consequently, my team was called Web3 Studio.
Gotcha.
Which is a subset, right? Inside R&D. And that's where we are today. Baseline got big enough that we actually had our own moniker to ourselves. We were the Baseline team, and we still are.
Nice.
And we're about to spin out a really cool company that'll have a brand new name. That'll be a whole new company. And that's what ConsenSys does. It builds companies. I mean, I can't lost counts in the 30s now. Companies. And
that sounds like
a fun
job.
Is called ConsenSys Software Inc. Same name. We're ConsenSys Mesh. The original company that Joe owns solely is called ConsenSys Mesh, and that's where I work. But we spun a big chunk of it off some time ago, over a year ago. CSI, ConsenSys Software Inc., and that's where that houses MetaMask, Infura, some really big money makers for the company.
Wow.
And JP Morgan is invested in that, and other banks, and MasterCard.
Wow. See, I have a feeling you're not going to get bored here because you get to scout nonstop.
That's a fun scouting job.
It sure seems like it. I had someone ask you about Bill Hyman over at ConsenSys. I don't even know who that is.
They asking about Bill. Just spell it. Hyman.
Hinman.
Hinman. Yes.
Hinman. There we go. Yeah. Asking about ConsenSys and Bill Hinman.
Check. Hold on. Hold on.
Bill Hinman.
Yeah, I don't have an answer there.
No answer. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, I agree. Zero knowledge proofs are huge. It really is. So going back to Baseline, Baseline's goal is to accelerate the development, adoption, and create new standards for IT state synchronization over the internet. Always on tamper-resistant state machine to manage cryptographic proofs that let us prove that a record in one Baseline database is verifiably identical to the same record in another Baseline database.
Baseline
database.
Baselined. Right? Baseline
and this is massive.
This is massive. It's not a token. It's not a coin. It's not a scheme. It's not a chain. It's not a product of any kind. It's not even a state machine. It is a standard. The draft just dropped, and it'll be going to ratification at the OASIS standards body, which is behind SGML and SAML and AMQP and MQTT, all sorts of boring but super important IT.
I was about to say this is not boring stuff. That's pretty super.
Oh no, it's super boring. In fact, it's so boring that we call it the boring is the new exciting is sort of our watchword around here.
But John, this is massive. There's over 600 companies have joined. I mean, that doesn't sound too boring. Doesn't sound too boring to me. It seems like you guys have been making
aren't sponsoring, but there are well over 1,000 people from probably that many different companies at this point.
Wow, incredible!
That are involved or contributing or in the Slack talking about stuff and then like anything else, the Pareto rule applies. So there's some really heavy contributors like Kyle Thomas at Provide. And Unibright and Provide got really up against this stuff. I mean, they've just bet the farm on all this stuff and went all in, zoomed right past all of us big cats, and now we're dancing to their tune.
Nice.
And that's how open standards and open source work, and it's good. In fact, Hyperledger was so we had a hard time getting IBM's contribution below 50%. There was a lot of hegemony. People would claim hegemony. It drove me crazy because I worked really hard to avoid that. I didn't want that. But, it is true. IBM, we had, lots of people working full time on Fabric.
Right.
With this standard, little companies, a bunch of them, are really on the vanguard. And Ernst & Young, of course, is still doing tons of stuff. And now there's real deal flow coming through, like Coca-Cola and ServiceNow and
I saw. That's incredible,
really big
man.
deals that I'm just not allowed to talk about. Drives me crazy.
Oh, come on!
If Coca-Cola can talk about it, then why can't you talk about this stuff?
Yeah. No, I'm happy for you. I really am. So help I guess unstupefy. I'm gonna use your word stupid, right? Unstupefy me on Ethereum. So typically when I think about
a show called Not Stupid About, wouldn't that be a good show?
No, that'd be a good show. We should do that.
Hey, this week we're stupid about crypto.
Right. No, that's a good idea. We're going to do that. So we'll talk about that. Because I really think, there's no way we're going to grow and get to the next level if we keep having these stupid thoughts. I like that. So
the technology is not stupid, and stupid thoughts are smart, actually, right? And that's my point. Is that that's how you get to smart. You just can't. You don't want to stop. Right?
Stop thinking.
Want to stop on the stupid, right? Yeah. So you got to say, hey, I'm going to use this to get smart.
So I know that we've talked, and for what you guys are doing, there's a lot of chains out there, but you believe Ethereum, is probably one of the best. It's the best, blockchain to do this.
For the low level job of making sure that my proofs are not tampered with.
Mm-hmm.
The Ethereum mainnet's a pretty dang good candidate for being that tamper resistance and ordering machine.
So when I'm in different circles, right, and you hear this company or Baseline using Ethereum, the first thought is, well, Ethereum is slow, the gas prices are high. What are we not getting?
I don't work. Yeah. It doesn't matter for what I'm using it for. It doesn't matter. if you're worried about TPS and performance and noisy neighbor, your first mistake was thinking about a blockchain, period.
Right.
Every time I
right.
say, oh, well, our TPS is faster than, Ethereum, I'm like, that's because you're treating it as a fancy database. And that is stupid. I know, because I was that stupid.
So yeah, so I think that's important. So gas, it doesn't matter for what you guys are doing. It
No,
doesn't
and then
matter.
of course L2s, so when you do want to use a shared, I like to call them shared databases. When you do want a shared database, and there are reasons to have a shared database, I like Git. Git would be a good shared database.
Right.
Right? But let's
Right.
call them shared databases. Let's not call them blockchains, right? Blockchains
Right.
conjure up all sorts of stupid ideas, or wrong ideas about what they can and can't do, what you really want. If you said, we're going to set up a shared database between us and our partners, if everybody understands that and says, okay, great.
Great.
Then
Right.
Stellar, knock yourself out. Awesome. Use Stellar because I don't know, I haven't looked at Stellar in a while, but probably a pretty good shared database. Fabric,
You should come look. You should come look at it some
super
more.
complicated, but good shared database, right?
And
shared
like
databases
and like
are
and like
fine.
and like and like Fabric says they're a private blockchain. He uses that word, but it's a private
Permissioned. Jared would
permissioned.
be upset. Yeah, it permissioned blockchain, right?
Okay, permission.
Yeah,
Now,
everybody with a node has permissioning. But then, like I said, once you get there, Mark Andreessen got this early on. I call this Andreessen's revenge. And we were always like, why does Mark make fun of us about private blockchain? Well, turns out because he's smarter than we are.
right.
Yeah, I mean, once you go to permissioned nodes, if you follow the logic through, it turns out you're basically just making a complicated and expensive shared database.
Gotcha. Now another blockchain that I've heard come up, and I guess correct me here. Blockchain layer 2 is Chainlink. It's I've seen where you guys have been integrating Chainlink into Baseline protocol. Describe to us, introduce us to how Chainlink is used.
Let me. Yeah, I should clarify a little bit. Baseline protocol is a standard, so
Right.
you can't.
Okay.
It's not. It's just a really good name, and so it sounds like a product. So we
Right.
wind up. I always have to kind of fix this, even in my own head, like even in my internal monologue. It's easy to kind of start using language that sounds like a product. And so integrating with Baseline,
Right.
it doesn't actually compute. It sounds right, but it doesn't compute because Baseline is a standard. It'd be sort of like saying integrating with EDI. Not even that,
Gotcha.
because most of the time when you're talking about EDI, you're talking about specific state machines that run EDI, like GS1 or something. But it's just a standard. It'd be like saying integrating with HTML.
Gotcha. Makes
Right.
sense.
So it's a technique. It's a design pattern.
Okay.
You can, as long as you follow the rules of the design pattern, which have now been written down, you can build it in anything you like, as long as those components are compliant with the standard. It's mostly about saying, hey, we all need to start doing verified multi-party workflows, right? It's no longer about internal BP. Well, it still will always be about internal system integration, right? But the cool stuff now is not how do I integrate my AS400 from the 80s or 70s and 80s to some other thing internally. It's also now I need to integrate cross company, and then you're adding, hey, I don't want to go full Monty with everybody with my data, but we need to be also confident that we have consistency where we need it on a record by record compartmentalized basis. And we also have to have some kind of a referee to say, yes, in a dispute between your record and this and my record, we can be sure one of us is right without, either of us having control over that referee's function. And that's that's why you put the proofs on a public blockchain, where you've taken that out of play. And also it's like it's like a SaaS service in that it's always on, can't lock you out of valid operations. So it's better than the SaaS service. It's not like, like any API could lock you out. No, can't do that. So as long as you're doing valid operations, it's always running, it's always on, and you can pay as you go. You don't have to pay capital or maintain it. right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the gas fees are high, but if all you're doing is rolling up a big drop of proofs from an L2 like Base Ledger, so baseledger.net is out there now. It's the first baseline. I can't say compliant because the standard isn't out, isn't promulgated yet. But when it is, they're way ahead on being the first baseline compliant state machine for managing proofs.
Okay.
And yeah,
Wow.
they drop. And so what they do is they take the Merkle tree of a bunch of proofs, and then they drop the anchor of that, or the root, to the Ethereum mainnet. And on a per proof basis, it's tiny cost. And it's all paid in fiat, so you don't have to hold crypto ever. You don't even have to know it's they have a token that's involved in the clearing of the opcodes, but you don't ever have to see that. And when you drop a proof onto that, or you manage the proof, every operation is fixed price. It's not, there's a governance body that fixes the price, but if the value of that of their token, which is called UBT, Universal Business Token, is if it goes up, right, if it moons or whatever crypto people call it, it doesn't really matter, because the cost of the proof stays the same. It's reverse geared, so it always, the proof is always going to cost you a fraction of a penny, until governance says, well, maybe it's now a fraction and a half of a penny or whatever.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. What would you say is the best use for, like, I guess if you can give a use case example of who is ideal for you guys to work with? I mean, you mentioned a couple companies, but how do they use you guys?
Sure. So there's two ways to use the baseline approach, or there's let me put it differently. There's lots of uses. There's a hackathon this weekend at ETH Atlanta,
Yes.
ETHATL.com. Go join it virtually or in person in Atlanta. Atlanta is a good place for this event, because baselining is going to be very front and center at that event. There'll be a bunch of developers that are going to be hacking through the weekend, and
there you go.
It's in It's in a town that is pretty well known for logistics and supply chain.
Atlanta's blowing up with the tech and blockchain scene.
Well, yeah, and you got FedEx and DHL, all these other, UPS, and a bunch of other companies there that do this stuff. So the most obvious use case in business for baselining is, I've got an invoice, and I'm gonna invoice you, and if I baseline it, this guy will, and this is so this is what we're building. This company is now coming on the scene, basically to say, we will buy your invoice for a ridiculously low discount rate if it's baselined.
Gotcha. Right?
Because the risk of not getting paid after I buy your invoice outright off your balance sheet, this is called factoring, but this is almost like, if factoring is to taxis, this would be to Uber this would be Uber, right? A very, very different experience. So inexpensive and fluid that you could do it for nearly all of your invoices. And you get paid now. So anytime where somebody needs to get paid now, or where we could end this supply chain whipsaw problem, where the little company at the back end of a big supply chain, to say a big aerospace company or what have you, when that sector goes through a disruption, or a bunch of planes fall out of the sky and suddenly there's no money, that little company doesn't get paid, or get paid on time. But what if they already had their money, and there's a giant fund that says, well, that's a bad day for us, but we're so diversified that it doesn't matter. I mean, it does, but we can handle it. But that whole supply chain is still operating. We haven't shut down the economy. I like that. I like that story a lot. Yeah.
No.
It just comes back to being able to, we've been calling this provenance, but provenance bothers me because, provenance, like supply chain provenance, you're talking about transparency. And I'm like, I don't think we want transparency. I mean, we want we want something that's important, which is we want to be able to very quickly know where the contaminated radishes are, right?
Right.
But I don't think we want everybody in the world, including some bad guys, knowing where all of our food is. And I'm pretty sure I don't want my competitor knowing that much about me either, right? So my radishes, I don't want you to know about my radishes, but I want the regulator to know about my radishes. So we want the right people to know the right thing at the right time, and quickly and efficiently. And again, the sort of naive sort of first thought that we had was, oh, let's put it all on a singleton. Let's put it all on a big shared database called a blockchain. And if you're big enough, like a Walmart, you can get people to go along with that. And even then, before then, they could have said that. They didn't. Why? Because there were reasons I didn't want to give you all my data. My uncle used to supply the Detroit automakers. I'm pretty sure he didn't want to give his machine telemetry to the automakers, right?
Right.
Even though they were his customers, right? There's just something you want. You want sovereignty as a company, right? So but we were able to get around that by saying, oh, don't worry, it's a blockchain. Oh, and if you do this, A, you can keep working with us, and B, we'll put you on the stage with the CEO of IBM in front of 30,000 people at the IBM show, right? Like, okay, so now that the bloom is coming off of that rose, though, what are you seeing? Well, from what I'm hearing, you're seeing a lot of die-off from that because people are remembering why they didn't want to do that in the first place.
Right.
Baselining would give us another bite at that cherry to say, all right, keep your data, but we are going to apply this zero knowledge set of circuits that will allow us to know things that are important and be able to get to things quickly when it's appropriate, but you have full control and you're not spreading your data out all over hell and gone.
Good. I think that's great. And like I said, I hope things like this help to expose that not every single thing is for every. It's like not Ethereum can't do it all. Stellar can't do it all. There's different approaches to different things that you want to do. So we got to stay out of these silos. So just to kind of wrap things up here, I mean, going back, you have ETH ATL coming up. Is it this Friday? It starts this Friday, right?
Yeah, and we're going to announce. So there's a couple of companies that will be announcing. My lab is going to be announcing something. We're already out there. There's a Discord channel on it called Tree Trunk NFT, where we are going to be showing how to build NFTs that are, again, unstupided. Where, I mean, think about, right, with an NFT, what do you want? You're an art lover. You want to be able to support the artist.
Yes.
The goal of it is to really change the economics for creators, right? Wouldn't that be
absolutely?
Great?
Absolutely.
Here's the problem: ones and zeros, even in the digital world, even with blockchain, are still perfectly replicatable. Right? I can, your Rolex, is a series of ones of atoms that are unique, and it's a marvel of engineering. Digital art can be a marvel of itself, but I can perfectly replicate it and turn it into another NFT. This is the elephant in the room for NFTs. Well, with baselining, and so what do you want to do? You want to be able to, if you're a curator, you want to own, possess, control a unique, exclusive asset, right? The Mona Lisa.
Right.
But you also want to share it. You want everybody to be able to see it.
Sure.
So this is a conundrum. It's exactly the conundrum that baselining aims to solve in business. I want to know that I have control over this piece of information, but I also want to share it, but I also don't want to lose control. So with a baselined NFT, what you do is you run your art through a digital, a zero knowledge circuit. You create effectively what you call a special watermarked file. And then that becomes the original, the root. And then you can mint prints like a lithography process, each of which have ones and zeros that have been changed, but can prove, using the baseline proof, that they are a child of the original, even though the original is never shown or seen. It's hidden in a vault. Right?
Yeah,
think about that for a minute, right?
That's
it's
pretty tight.
hidden in a PEE where nobody gets to it, but you can prove that it's in there, And you can prove that it looks like this public file that you've put out, but that public file, again, is not the actual ones and zeros of the original. You could even destroy the original, and it's kind of like destroying the plates of a lithography process. Now, each of the children can still prove that they are an original or a,
Right.
you know, I'm print number 3. In fact, you can have whole trees, which is why we call it tree trunk. You can have, you know, I am the third grandchild of the second child of the original, right? And think about that from a royalties perspective. Right now, if I own the third child of the original, and I've got 16 grandchildren, each with 16 grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm at the top of a pretty long royalty chain.
Right. Wow.
It's multi-level marketing for art, but in this context, it's a pretty good. That's a game changer for creators. Imagine sitting as a creator, sitting at the top of a spread out, like a root system of royalty streams.
And that is, when is that going to be launching? Is that
We're
being
going to do the
launched
tech
now?
demo on Friday at ETH Atlanta, and
Wow.
so we got the code up and polish it up a bit. Put it out on Friday. Subject it to hackers who are going to tear it apart, and then we'll figure out whether we should do it after that.
Nice. And so we can go to ethatl.com, register to attend, and it's in person and virtual. It's going to be at the Atlanta Tech Park. Like I said, it's great. I'm actually looking at great speakers. It seems like a great event. I've been hearing so much about it from a lot of my friends out in the Ethereum community. So.
Yeah,
I mean, this is
Coca-Cola,
great.
Service Now, they're going to be there. They're going to be speaking. I'm going to be doing my best George Carlin impersonation there. It'll be fun.
I think you gotta rock it out, man. Rock it out all the way. John, I mean, for those that are listening that want to get the deep dive more, ConsenSys baseline, the baseline approach, man. It's really interesting. Once again, you're innovating in the space, which is great to see, and I hope to definitely keep in contact with you. And
Same
keep
here,
up to
Sam.
date.
It's been great meeting you and getting to know you a little bit. I loved your setup call that we had, and I should say for all the Stellar fans out there, Stellar is a state machine. You can baseline Stellar just fine, and there's nothing in the standard that says you can't use Stellar as the common frame of reference in the system. You don't have to use another public blockchain. You could use Stellar as well.
There you go.
Technically, I might make fun of you.
Well, you know what? Hey, but it's a good thing that we're buddies, so I know you'll help me set it up right. No, but this is great. This is what it's all about, man. It's about collaboration and it's about growing the space smart. And I'm absolutely, because I got some buddies of mine. I'm actually doing a show tomorrow. Got some NFT artists that are going to be highlighting working with Lightmint, and so I'm gonna talk to Fred, see if we could we could tie in baseline into what he's doing and make things even better. That'll be great.
Everybody's getting on the baseline. In fact, I'll give you the music.
No. I think we can end it. Please, we're gonna have John play the baseline music. I need you to send me the MP3 so I can go running to that. By the way, everybody, if you're watching, please like, subscribe, follow. Follow John Wolpert. He's always sharing interesting things to unstupid your brain about blockchain and technology. That's the word of the day. And tomorrow, as I said, at 3:00, I got Fred with Lightmint. We're going to be talking with some of the hottest NFT artists on the Stellar network. And we're going to go ahead and ride out to this baseline song. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing everything with our community. And we'll be in touch. Baseline, please.
Pleasure, Sam.
Baseline.